It's ladies' night, this time on Wrestling with the Business. Ladies and gentlemen, do not adjust your sets. It is I, Jeremy Bodat, with you here again to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of professional wrestling. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, Matthew More Than Man Lambert. We come back from a bit of a hiatus this week to some surprises, some boos and bravos. TLC happened recently. AEW and NXT officially tied at the finish line in this week's Wednesday Night Wars. But this time we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're going to give the ladies some attention tonight. And from the steam coming out of Matt's ears, I think he probably has a thing or two to complain about. Hey gang, before we get into the latest and greatest in the world of professional wrestling, we wanted to tell you about another show we've been binging lately.
Now, if you're anything like us, you're constantly rereading the books you love, listening to your favorite song, or watching your favorite movies. But we also like to get a fresh take on the things that we know and love. Scarifire does exactly that for the horror genre of film.
Scarifire is hosted by a couple of steely-eyed missile men, aptly named the Ace and Gov. Now, these guys have extensive experience in the performance genre, whether it be music, the stage, film, or, dare I say it, the squared circle itself.
Each week, Ace and Gov train their eyes and ears on a new target of the genre, and nobody is safe. Classic, foreign, indie, slasher, and Gorno alike.
So if you've got a hot date with a complete psycho, a classic you want a fresh take on, or just some time to kill in the car on your way into work, you should check out Scarifire. Scarifyer at the link below.
Now back to the action.
Matt, what's going on in the women's division right now?
Nothing at all. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Yeah, it's been a little disappointing lately. With all the talk over the last 2-3 years of women's evolution in WWE and in wrestling in general, it really seems like the push for the women's division has really gone downhill since WrestleMania, namely since Ronda Rousey left the company, or took a hiatus, whatever you want to say. It's really been disappointing, man.
Well, let's go back a little bit, because we are where we are today, which I'm sure we'll get into. But this didn't start today. You said that it started with Ronda Rousey sort of taking a hiatus, potentially leaving the company. But, I mean, she hasn't wrestled since when?
WrestleMania.
I mean, it really started a little bit more recently than that, don't you think?
Yeah, it definitely started to become much more prominent, much more noticeable within the last, 3-4 months at the most.
What triggered it for you? What was the event that said, holy crap, we're in a downhill? I mean, for me, just speaking for myself, I think it was the draft.
Yes. The draft had a major part to do with it.
I mean, the draft in WWE basically annihilated the tag team women's division, which was doing quite well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Along with the tag teams, we talked about it a bunch of times about one of our favorite teams, Bliss Cross, and how every show they're switching between heel or babyface, depending on who they're facing. So there was no consistency. There was no proper stories being told. I think when those two were the champions, I mean, they were doing pretty well for themselves. They were definitely pushing those title belts better than they had been pushed previously. But again, it all came down to there was no consistency, no proper storytelling. And this trend I actually had in my notes about the heels and the baby faces, how there's been no... a lot of people have been flipping back and forth pretty frequently. Charlotte Flair is another one. You never know if she's a babyface or a heel. Again, I'm going to say this a lot in this talk. It's it comes down to consistency. It's like they have no plan whatsoever for the women's division.
I'm going to give Charlotte Flair a little bit of credit, and I am a big Charlotte Flair fan, but,
sure.
She is, yes, you're right, the storyline will move her, will give her a hot and cold sort of tone, but she is consistent, in my opinion, miraculously consistent with her image, with her actions. She never gets into that ring without having the ref
She
hold
is
the rope
consistently a heel, yes.
which is a heel thing to do, right? So, and she's not, she's doing these turns, but you don't see her doing these big Bailey type swings, left to right, complete image change, top to bottom. Sasha Banks, let's talk about what happened there, because it really hit a high with Sasha Banks' return. I mean, people were excited, people were interested, and then literally, God, it must have been, not a month later, crash and burn.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone was with Sasha Banks in particular, she had been away for so long, again, no, it wasn't at WrestleMania, was it? When did they lose the titles? It was WrestleMania.
I thought you took her ball and went home. I thought it was WrestleMania.
Yep, it was WrestleMania. That's right. They lost them to the Iconics. So she was gone for a good 4-6 months. Everyone was so excited to see her back that it was this little injection into the storyline, into the division that got people up. And then for her to turn heel immediately on Natalya that same night, it was nice. It was a breath of fresh air, if anything else.
Yeah, actually, I keep driving the timeline forward, but it wasn't but a few weeks later. Yeah, it's funny because in the midst of all this, now that I'm thinking about it, the women's division is breaking international barriers. I mean, they had the first women's match in Saudi Arabia. That came with some caveats or whatever, but they went out there, they wrestled, there may be better, there may be worse, but there'll never be another first, right? I don't want to hang on that too long, though. So, again, back to my original question. So, was there an event, was there a moment, was there an incident for you that really, really just drove home the point that this women's division across all of WWE, not just one brand, is in a bit of a nosedive?
I think I really started seeing signs of it sometime after WrestleMania, once the Iconics became the tag champs. And they did absolutely nothing with them. Yeah. I think they were the champions for a good 6 months, give or take. And I think they defended those titles 3 times.
No. If they won them at WrestleMania, it wasn't 6 months. It was, what? It was like 3 months, 4 months?
4 months. Okay, maybe it was 4 months. In 4 months, they defended the titles 3 or 4 times at the most. They did nothing with the titles. They did nothing. You didn't even see them on TV half the time. That was when I first started seeing inklings that they really did not care. Since Rousey was gone, since Charlotte and Becky were doing their own things, that was all they were focusing on. They still heavily focus on Charlotte, for sure.
Let's switch gears and talk about NXT a little bit. Is leaving the title with Shayna Baszler this long the right move?
Yes. And I only say that because it has been effective. There have been other women who have stepped up, but none have gotten to the height that Shayna has or that Asuka before her did. But they have been building up other women. Like now, you got Rhea Ripley, you got Candice LeRae, you got Bianca Belair, Mia Yim, Io Shirai. You have all of these women who have gone there, who have been built up, and who can potentially take over once Shayna is gone. So it's been a good thing in that respect.
Yeah, Rhea Ripley, I think, could be the one to take Shayna Baszler, but
I think she's going to this week, actually.
she's really, because I was just gonna say that until Shayna Baszler gets called up or whatever, I don't know that they're gonna let her lose it.
I think that's happening sooner rather than later. I think they want to build off the Survivor Series and have her start feuding with Becky.
Well, hey, listen, if it happens sooner, that's fine. The women's division could certainly use an injection of some excitement. That's for sure. What does the women's division need to do? And I want to talk a little bit more specific than general here. I want to talk about specific things that the WWE can do to put their... Because this is the trouble that WWE has. Anytime they're recovering, it's so blatantly obvious what they're doing. It's so blatantly obvious when they're copying AEW. It's so blatantly obvious when they're forcing a superstar onto the fan base. Mm-hmm. What can they do to sort of start to triage this issue in the collapsing women's division without making it look like they're trying too hard, or that without putting up a pair of crutches basically underneath the whole division?
That's going to be the trick. I think WWE's at a point where anything they do, there's going to be the detractors who say, oh, they're just doing that just because. But I think a step in the right direction is what they did last year was the first ever all-women's pay-per-view, Evolution. That was one of the better pay-per-views of 2018. It was a really good show. And they chose not to do one again this year. I couldn't find the article when I was writing up my notes, but I saw somewhere Stephanie McMahon saying something along the lines of they weren't doing the Evolution pay-per-view this year because they were so focused about doing that one match in Saudi Arabia. So it's like that's been one underlying thing in this whole women's evolution, is that WWE is only doing stuff for history's sake, to be able to say they were the first to do this. First women's Hell in a Cell match, first women's Elimination Chamber match, first women's main event at a pay-per-view. They were doing it for history's sake rather than it's what should be happening.
Yeah, I mean, if I was them, I would... well, first of all, the women's division is too injured right now.
There are a lot of injuries.
There's a lot of injuries, and a lot of the injuries don't seem to be linked to your standard, oh yeah, I took a power bomb funny, or whatever. A lot of them seem to be linked to some of the more extreme stuff.
Yeah, Nia Jax tore one or both ACLs.
Yeah, I mean, it's all like, oh, I was put through a ladder, or oh, I took a chair wrong, or oh, I took a TV monitor to the back of the head. Like
Ruby Riott had shoulder surgery.
I mean, it's all... Women aren't getting hurt doing the things, and I'm going to wax a little bit political and a little poetic here, but, you know, it appears to me that in response to AEW's pressure and the way that AEW is highlighting the women's division, it seems to me that WWE's answer to that is, well, we're just going to turn the women into men. We're going to put women in extreme matches. We're going to put them in Hell in a Cell. We're going to put them in Elimination Chamber. We're going to put them in, you know what I mean? We're going to put them in Equality for All, instead of finding a way to create a unique product that is entertaining, athletic, and feminine. They're just putting the women in the same situation that the men are in. And I mean, not to be sexist here, but I don't see none of them going through the top of the cage onto the mat. You know what I mean? I don't see them swanton bombing from the top of the cage. Like, yeah, there have been a couple moves from the top of the cage, and those are extremely impressive. I'm not trying to cut them short, but I'm just saying that the bar is really, really, really high. And if you just copy and paste people that are on average smaller, weaker, you know, that kind of stuff, it's not going to look as impressive. God, even at the TLC match, You see how difficult it actually is to put someone through a table. Bobby Lashley threw Rusev, and he didn't break the table.
Yep.
I mean, strike one against the wrestling is fake crowd. You know, you can't. If your answer is we're going to make the women like the men, I think you're going to fail. You're going to create a product that injures your workers and doesn't look nearly as impressive. You need to find a way to develop something that is athletic, interesting, and feminine, that is uniquely theirs, that men basically can't do, because there are all of these physical things that men are doing in the ring right now that women just can't do, or haven't done, I should say. Maybe it's not a matter of can't, it's just a matter of haven't. So women, get going on those 650 splashes and swanton bombs off the top of the cage, and we want you bench pressing people that are your weight or more, or I'm sorry, military pressing people that are your weight or more. You know, get going with that kind of stuff, because that's really the only answer that we've got. And I have no idea what that product's going to look like. I think the writers and the creators need to seriously sit down and think about what they can do besides have a different belt that's going to drive some excitement into the women's division. And maybe it's a gimmick. Maybe it's a Fiend, Bray Wyatt type scenario.
Careful, you're treading closely to bra and panty matches again.
No. I said it also has to be athletic, right? So definitely not trying to go back to the world of the pillow fights and the what were they called, the Nitro girls. Definitely not trying to go back to those days. I think that women bring something unique to the ring that's uniquely interesting and entertaining. WWE and frankly AEW needs to find a way to capitalize on that.
Yeah,
they need to find a way to capitalize on that.
When you're talking about the TLC pay-per-view that happened this past weekend, the main event was the women's tag title match. Charlotte and Becky versus the champions of Kabuki Warriors. And it was really disappointing. Part of the reason was because Kairi Sane very clearly got injured early on with some sort of...
And they let her continue.
Yeah.
They let her continue.
With a head injury or concussion.
People. Watch the video. She is not okay.
No.
The fact that someone did not step in, I mean, this is the MLB. I mean, imagine an outfielder just wandering around the field after taking a ball to the head. And nobody runs out to the field and says, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" I mean, I cannot believe that they let her continue in the condition that she was in. It was so blatantly obvious.
So, but to go on with that match, besides Kairi being injured, it seemed that match was extremely choreographed. It was very unnatural looking from start to finish. I think what the writers and producers need to do, for one thing, and this goes for all wrestlers across the board, they need to stop choreographing these matches step by step, move by move. And that happens a lot with women's matches in general. It just looks completely unnatural. If you had a properly set match, if they're not doing 630s like you said earlier, if they're at least performing a match that looks natural, that looks competitive, that looks athletic, I think that would go a long way in increasing the interest in these matches.
Yeah, there has to be a way. There has to be a way. And actually, if you think about the woman in WWE that's getting the most attention right now, she doesn't wrestle. She's caught in a love triangle between two men.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's getting more airtime. She's getting more attention. She's getting...
And you're talking about Lana and Rusev and Bobby Lashley.
Yeah, and she's not... And she fits every negative female stereotype, right? Lying about her pregnancy, forcing a divorce for no real good reason.
Cheating on her husband.
She's screechy and irritating. Like, they've turned her into this caricature of this terrible shrew that is only pretty on the outside, and she's the one that's getting all the light. I mean, if I was a woman wrestling in the division right now, or if I was a fan right now, I would be screaming. I'd be tweeting at the top of my thumbs. You people, you have to do better. This is ridiculous.
She has actually said she's gotten legitimate death threats over this storyline. It's had to have.
They just signed her to another 5-year deal. They just signed her to a new 5-year contract. Good on her. I mean, all she's doing is going out and standing next to the ring and screaming for 20 minutes every week. I mean, good for her. If she makes $1 off of that, she's doing better than you or I are. But I just, the women are better than that. And I'm sure that they're going to try to pitch some kind of women's main event at WrestleMania, a lot like they did last year. And if they don't do something to seriously treat the issues that they're having in the division right now, people like me who are going to be critical of that decision are going to be seen as sexist, misogynistic. It's like, you can't, not only have you not created something unique for these women, you haven't done any story development, you haven't done any plot development, you haven't added any pressure, so I have no emotional invested interest. And I'm not saying it's got to be Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker type stuff, but you at least have to have my interest. You have to spend more than 2 weeks building up a storyline, and your women have to be healthy if they're going to show up and create a vested interest in me. I don't know.
All right, there's a couple of points in there I wanted to touch on that you just brought up. First off, the main events, the WrestleMania main event. So the women just main evented TLC this past weekend. They main evented Survivor Series last month. And they main evented WrestleMania earlier this year. I'm sure there was 1 or 2 other shows in there that they main evented since then. But those 3 in particular, reports came out that Vince McMahon was extremely unhappy with all 3 of those main events. So, do you really think he's going to allow any more women's matches to main event big shows anytime soon?
I mean, if that's true, if I was Vince McMahon and I was dissatisfied with the main event at my Super Bowl of wrestling, there would not be a second and a third. I would have a very specific list of demands that would need to be met by creative and the performers, the athletes, if I was going to consider something like that again. So I'm a little skeptical that he was actually as disappointed as is sort of implied.
It's, sources say, sources in the company say.
Look. Okay, so I'm gonna defend Vince McMahon a little bit here. You don't run the most successful, paradigm shifting, sports entertainment altering. I mean, Vince McMahon changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
He changed professional wrestling. He changed the way that we consume it. And he created a company that has been, to some degree or another, the premier wrestling promotion in the entire world for the last 35 years, 40 years. And he's consistently stayed at the top, despite the fact that he has had significant challenges from his left and his right. You don't get lucky. You don't get lucky for 30 years. You don't fight off 6 or 7 well-financed, fan-driven challenges over the course of 35 years through luck. Okay? And he is not, everyone is so critical of what is determined to be his decisions. You can't tell me that he is, in effect, making all of those decisions. He's in his own head. He's not just showing you what Vince McMahon wants to see.
Mm-hmm.
Minimally, he's showing you what he thinks you want to see. Right?
I might argue that, but okay.
Well, look, am I saying he does that all the time? No. I mean, there can be no doubt that the Montreal Screwjob was because Vince McMahon is a pompous. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there was just no reason for that whatsoever. It was unprofessional, and right. So you can point to particular significant instances, and you can say, "Wow, that's some hubris right there," if I've ever seen it. Well, you can't tell me that he hasn't consistently provided a product that this is a results-oriented process. The survey showed WWE is the most successful wrestling promotion in the history of wrestling promotions. It's bigger than everything else put together, times 10. It's the Jupiter of professional wrestling. Like nothing else comes anywhere near it. So he's listening to the fans, and the fans are saying, we want to see women wrestling. And he's giving the fans what they want, but the promotion isn't supporting them with the storylines and the opportunities and the quantity of airtime. You know, it's like he gives them minimum airtime 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks in a row, and then gives them the main event at the big pay-per-view. And then wonders why. You know what I mean? I think that this is a mistake that's easy to correct. People want women's matches, but they want good women's matches. They don't want women on there just for the sake of having women on there.
Yeah. What was the major storyline for the past 6 months involving women? It was who they are friends with. You know, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, they were best friends, but the whole story was Alexa's going to turn on him. And then Bayley and Sasha, their friendship was a major storyline. That's all. That's the only thing they can make a storyline out of for the women.
And it feels forced. Like, I think she's a great performer, you know, and I'm excited. But, you know, Becky Lynch, I mean, she's not getting the story that she needs, and after, you know, a year, it's falling stale. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's there's nothing new or interesting. There's nothing edgy about her. Certainly not anymore. And, you know, my wife likes Becky Lynch because Becky Lynch, when my wife shuts her eyes and thinks about what a female professional wrestler is, she pictures Becky Lynch. Mm-hmm. It's like she's effeminate but tough, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas she looks at some of the other women in the division and they have a tendency to look too much one or the other.
Right.
Oh my gosh, she looks like a female bodybuilder, or oh my gosh, you know, she looks like a little girl. Whereas Becky Lynch is sort of what she pictures in her head, or something maybe similar to Lacey Evans. You know, that same kind of effeminate, but still really tough. Wouldn't want to get in a bar fight with her type situation. But that can't carry you forever. Interesting things have to happen to you. You have to be challenged. You have to be pressure has to get built, and there is no pressure on the women's division right now. Everything is haphazard, week to week. There's no overarching storylines. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine at our company Christmas party last week, and I told him that the one sort of fan theory that I would be most interested in, and the only reason why I would be tolerant of the Rusev, Bobby Lashley, Lana love triangle extending all the way to WrestleMania would be if the story shifted and transformed to the point that by the time it got to WrestleMania, they had a main event level match that was loser keeps Lana. and you know, that would be the only way that I could see, because you need pressure, you need change, and you can see it. Like, they're trying, like with the Rusev Bobby Lashley thing. It's like, oh, you're being served with divorce papers. Oh, I'm having a baby. Oh, no, I'm not having a baby. Like, they're trying to, oh, we got arrested. Oh, there's a restraining order. Like, they're trying to do all these things to build up pressure, but it feels really forced. But at least they're trying, and at least pulls your interest to be like, oh, what the heck are these monkeys going to do? What are these clowns going to do this week?
It's the most watched clips on YouTube for the past several weeks.
I mean, what are these clowns going to do next? It at least like the 24/7 championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is going to happen this week? God only knows, right? All I know is it's going to be interesting. You have to at least make an effort to drive. They're trying to do it with the Bray Wyatt thing. Oh, look, Bray Wyatt's attacking the Miz's family, blah, blah, blah. Oh, look, RKO is threatening Kofi Kingston's family. I mean, at least give a nod or, show some interest in building some kind of pressure. The Bayley turn would have meant so much more if she had just snapped. If bad thing after bad thing after bad thing after bad thing had happened, and finally she just said, F it all, burn it down.
That catchphrase is taken.
You have to scream it, though. It's only the scream is trademarked. You have to build pressure. Maybe we should do a video down the road about what makes a good story, what makes a story compelling, what makes a story interesting, because there are some very, very easy things. There's probably 5 or 6 things that the WWE could do next week, that they could write into their story next week, that would drive a sense of pressure into the storylines that could really help the women's division.
All right, so the other thing I wanted to touch on really quick, which you mentioned several minutes ago now, was the injuries. So I was just doing a quick count of the rosters. How many women do you think, off the top of your head, do we see on a regular weekly basis on Raw or SmackDown?
Both or the other?
One or the other. Pick a show.
Okay. Raw. How many women do we see consistently?
Yep. And it's going to be a trick question because Becky was off of Raw for the last 2 or 3 weeks before TLC. And she's the champion.
Oh, so I can't count Becky?
You can count whoever you want. I'm just pointing out.
I was going to say she's the champion. I have to count the champion.
You would think so, right?
I'm going to say that there are 6.
Yeah, that's about what I think. There are 14 women on the Raw roster. You know how many of them are injured? Only 2.
Yeah.
And a third one is pregnant, Maria. But she's
who
on
are the
roster.
14 women? Read them off.
Oh, I didn't write down the names. I just tallied them up.
Oh, you just tallied them off.
I can pull it up quick.
I mean, yeah, there's
Hang on.
Yeah, there's really there's 6.
So
and again, there's no story.
We got Asuka, Becky Lynch, Billie Kay,
Don't see her.
Charlotte Flair,
See her.
Kairi Sane, Liv Morgan, who is making a return.
Yeah, but I wouldn't count her. You don't really see
No,
her.
I know. I'm just saying who's on the roster.
Okay.
Maria Kanellis,
Yeah, you don't see her anymore.
Naomi. She's not injured. She just disappeared.
Yeah, you don't see her anymore.
Natalia. Nia
Don't see her
Jax.
anymore.
That's the first injury. Nia Jax. Peyton Royce. Ruby Riott. That's the second injury.
Don't see her.
Sarah Logan. And Zelina Vega, who's a manager. Now you go over to SmackDown. How many women?
By the way, no tag team division for the women on Raw.
How many women do we see on SmackDown? About the same, 6, maybe less.
Well, you know what's funny is you didn't count Lana.
She's not listed on Raw. She's still a SmackDown wrestler.
Oh, I just assumed because
Yeah.
Lashley. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's
brand
weird. Okay,
split.
I guess the draft is meaningless. Okay.
So on SmackDown, there are also 14 women. Guess how many injuries?
2?
One.
Oh, yeah.
We got Alexa Bliss, Bailey, Carmella, Dana Brooke, who's been getting some action standing behind Elias while he's singing a song. Ember Moon, that's the one injury. Lacey Evans, Lana, Mandy Rose. Maurice is still listed on the SmackDown roster. Mickie James.
Jesus Christ.
Nikki Cross. They still have Paige listed. I didn't count her in the 14.
Why is she listed? She's a freaking talk show host now.
Sasha Banks. Sonya Deville. When was the last time you saw Tamina? She's not injured.
There's a lot of, though, there's at least 8 or 9 women there, though, that are
Never on
consistently...
TV. So they have a huge roster they could be using, they could be building stories with. And they're not doing it. I think Tamina was injured, but she came back several weeks ago and went for the 24/7 championship. And she just hasn't been seen since.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there that isn't being leveraged. Absolutely.
Yep. So, and the frustration is building even within the company. Most recently, we just mentioned Paige. She was on the Corey Graves WWE sanctioned podcast just this past week, and she was, I don't want to say complaining, but she did mention how she was disappointed with the women's build as of late. She specifically mentioned the lack of storylines. She actually mentioned how the 4 horsewomen, Charlotte, Bailey, Sasha, and Becky, how they get more attention than they really should. She says there's so many other women, like we just pointed out, on the roster that get no stories whatsoever that you never see. And she wants to see them built up better. It was definitely interesting. She went on for a little bit on that subject. It's definitely worth reading or listening to. But yeah, it's really disappointing, man. I was really excited when they started doing these matches the last couple of years, how they really started pushing things, and it's just going downhill.
WWE, give the ladies some love, invest some time, invest some energy, and you'll get it back in spades. There's no doubt about it. The fans are hungry for it. So leave a comment down below. Tell us, first of all, who is your favorite female performer of all time, and why? Yeah, that's one for now. I'm not going to have this argument with you right now, okay? It's too late. This video's gone on too long. I'm not going to have this argument with you. Tell us which one is your favorite and why. And comment below, what do you think the WWE needs to do? What do you want to see, which is going to reignite your interest in the women's division? Because right now it is dry and dead.
Yep. Hopefully things will turn around soon.
Yeah. Yeah, here's to hope, and say your prayers. Wear your PJs inside out and backwards. Maybe something good will happen.
So be sure to check out all of our social media and our website, and definitely stay tuned over the next week or two. We got some special things planned. Should be pretty interesting to see what happens coming up soon, so keep an eye out. And in the meantime, always remember, keep kayfabe, follow the money, and we'll keep wrestling with the business. Yes, it's ladies' night, and we're feeling...
I was literally going to sing that at first.